Okay folks, we're back today the 21st of March 19 for another instalment of TerraChem Crops Watch. We're in a crop of my own Bazooka winter barley today, sown 2nd of October. It's another one of those springs that started great in January, and we've had a fair bit of disagreeable weather the last while, which has taken its toll on crops. A lot of them have developed a sort of a yellowish hue across the top, primarily stress. This crop here now, winter barley, very simple message today. It's talking about front loading winter barley, which I'm always preaching about with barley because that's where the yield comes from. This crop on the 23rd of February would have received 60 kilos of nitrogen through UAN. Yesterday it received a further 65 kilos and 20 kilos of sulphur, again through UAN and ammonium sulphate mix. On the 12th of February, to encourage tillering, because as a hybrid you have to drive it early, it would have got K2 at 2 litres per hectare. It also got Uplift, which is a product that admittedly we do sell, but it's to reduce stress and it encourages the plant to develop better. It also got its cereal ally multi-nutrient mix. It got a litre of boron, which is something I believe in because boron is involved in pollination and grain set, but it didn't get any fungicide or anything at that stage. It's not one of the mildew prone varieties, but surprisingly there's a lot of mildew on this Bazooka. Tomorrow the plan would be, now that we have the second main split of nitrogen on it, we're going to come back in and we're going to give it a litre of Cycocel, 0.2 of Modus. Again, I'm a believer in a big first fungicide, because if you get it right at the start, you're cruising the whole way through the season. It'll get 2 litres of Trioris. It'll probably get 0.25 of the new mildewicide, Midas, which relative to the other mildewicides that are available, if you look at the HGCA ratings, on a scale of 1 to 5, it's the only thing that will score a 4, whereas the other two leading brands on the market will only score a 3 or a 2, looking at HGCA data. So I'll include that to knock down the mildew. I'll have the Trioris, but this year I'm going to switch from proline, which I normally use, to rubric, primarily because there's also a bit of brown rust. And because of the brown rust, the epoxyconazole has a little bit more effect than the proline does, so that's why I'll make the switch. As regards the growth stage we're spraying at, this particular plant that I've just opened up, it's a strong growth stage 31. Now that's important for the regulator I'm about to apply. For the previous regulator, it was just on the point of 30. But as regards the first fungicide on winter barley, I don't get too hung up on what growth stage we apply it on. It's more looking at having a bulk of crop to take in the product. But growth stage is critical as regards getting your growth regulator right, and on the hybrids that's absolutely essential. But the other thing, as I said, to highlight, it's front loading the barley, getting a big heavy fungicide program on, getting all its trace element nutrition on, and we do use an awful lot of the product Uplift because it encourages growth, it encourages grain site formation, and the yield is basically being set here as we speak, whereas with wheat it'll be dictated at the end to a large degree. Barley you have to front load, so get your inputs on early and keep the crop clean. As regards the stress on the crop, now it's a little bit hard to see. The camera might be able to pick it up back along there, but this gives a better representation of it in my hand. You have a perfectly green sample of crop here. This one has an awful lot of yellow leaves. Could be mistaken for BYDV, but it isn't. The whole field developed this colour, particularly after the 2 Sundays where we got that sleety, snowy, harsh weather that had skin you. Basically the plant came under stress because of the weather, and what's back here and also in the still shot we'll take of the tram lines from last year, that's where the beet would have been loaded here 2 years ago. The crop emerged lovely, came out of the ground perfectly, it grew away fine in January, you couldn't see a thing, but the minute the harsh weather impacted upon the field, you end up with this kind of an effect. Every time you stress a plant, you reduce yield capacity, and that's why people will say, I love my trace elements, I love my foliar feeds, are they all worth it? Well, looking at that, it's fairly obvious to my mind, if it's having an impact on the plant, it's going to have an impact on yield. So anything you can do now to reduce that has to be worthwhile.